Mm-hmm. I can't see myself on the screen yet. Mm-hmm. Ah, I can now see myself on the screen. And my first question to people who are early, hello, early people, is if you're wearing headphones, can you hear me in both ears? Because last time I streamed for my patrons, they were like, Jill, you're in mono? And I didn't know how to fix that, but I think I fixed it now, so let me know. Okay. Well, and now I have to wait until that question actually gets to you and then you can answer it. But that's okay. Welcome to the live stream. Let's call it the 300k live stream because it's been a while. It's been a while, but we're going to answer some questions here. We're not going to get to them all because there were a lot of them, but I am going to answer the questions like how did you get started in stage combat? How can I get started in stage combat? And then we're just going to go in like chronological order from the oldest question asked, like the first question asked on the post, and so on. Um, Excellent. Everyone can hear me in both their ears. That is what we like. Not really a live streamy person, you might have noticed. I don't really do it very often, except like for the 10 of you who I see once a month. But this is what we're doing. We've got 2 hours, and then that's when my dinner is coming, and there's fish and chips. And I love you, but fish and chips. So we're going to get as many questions answered as we can in that period of time. Let's do this thing. So the first question was, and the most common question I get is, how did you get started in stage combat? And the answer is it's kind of like Rian Johnson's fault, because I went to see The Last Jedi, and I really enjoyed the whole Kylo Ren Rey sort of dynamic thing they had going on there, and I really enjoyed the throne room, like the whole scene and the fight and all of that kind of thing. And so I went home like, there's got to be a way to learn to do that. And when I say that, I mean learn to pretend to fight and have it look cool, as opposed to learn to actually fight. I know there are many ways to learn to do that. So I googled stage combat near me, and that is how I came up with what was then the APC, the Academy of Performance Combat's summer intensive course in Kent, in Sandwich in Kent, which is like the back end of Kent for those of you who are not familiar with English geography. And I went there for a week in the summer of 2018 and went, wow, this is so much fun. And here we are 3 years later. I've just done the my third intensive there, and now I am an actor combatant by the standards of the of Actors Combat theatrical training. We'll come back to that. There are lots of different ways to do stage combat in the UK, but how I got into stage combat is I watched The Last Jedi and went, I want to learn how to do that, and I have been promised by some people that we might do a thing related to The Last Jedi specifically at some point. So that's a longer term plan, but we'll see. Sword Lady's origin story. Yes, I am mostly just. Hi, Liv. Excellent. I am mostly just not going to be looking at the chat because it goes a bit fast for me, but we'll see what we do there. The next most common question I get is, how can I get involved in stage combat, Jill? And the answer to that is, it depends. So I went and looked at my analytics, and 50% of you, roughly, are from the United States of America, though it might not be 50% represented here today because we're doing this at kind of in the morning if you're in the US. You guys, probably your best bet is to head to SAFD.org, which is the Society for American Fight Directors, and they are the union recognized, or at least a union recognized, the biggest union recognized stage combat association in the United States of America. And they will have information about local classes and things that are near you and all the things you can do with them and stuff like that. If you are in Australia, there is the Australian Stage. I made a list. There's the Australian Stage Combat Association, does the same thing. The Nordic Stage Fight Society does kind of the same thing. Stage Combat Germany does the same thing. Fight Directors Canada does the same thing. You will notice that I left out the UK. That's because in the UK there are, I think, 4 I can recall 4 different boards which are equity registered, which you can get stage combat experience with. They are the BASSC, the British Academy of Stage and Screen Combat, the BADC, the British Academy for Dramatic Combat, I think, British Association for Dramatic Combat, BADC anyway, the APC, the Academy of Performance Combat, and ACT, which is Actors Combat Theatrical Training. All of those are registered with equity. All of them are legit, and most of them, like, you can kind of port qualifications from one to another for the most part. Why do we have 4? Don't ask me. It's probably a story that begins, well, in 1957. So, dunno. Just, yeah. If you are not, the UK is a mess. Yes, indeed. So are these HEMA? No. So HEMA is kind of, HEMA is historical European martial arts, which is like trying to use the existing manuscripts and manuals to learn how people fought with swords and other things in ye olden Europe. Stage combat is all fake. Like, when we did Case of Rapiers, we used some stuff that's in Degrassi manuals, so it influences stage combat, but stage combat is all fake, and HEMA, you wear a lot of protective gear because you really do try and hit each other. So there you go. Why the UK has 4 different stage combat societies is a great Tom Scott video. Yes. Yes, it would be. But yeah, it is probably a story that begins, well, in 1957, so who even knows. Okay, those are the 2 most common questions I get. We're now going on to patron questions, of which there are about half a dozen. The first of which from Jessica is, have you ever been injured in practice or performance? Is there any part of stage combat you consider too unsafe to pursue? No to the second part, because like stage combat, the whole thing, like you get sat down at the beginning and they're like, right, basically, we're going to teach you a whole bunch of stuff. There are only really 2 rules. Be safe, be convincing. And if you're not being safe, then bad. No, stop that. So, no, there have been things which I have been unable to do with the partner that I had, which we might get onto in a bit. But the point is to be safe. And so they will not make you do things which you cannot do. And it's not a place nor a hobby nor a pastime nor a job, I guess, where I feel unsafe. So no. Have you ever been injured? Yes, but usually it's my own stupid fault. So like sometimes you get bruised, you miss a parry, or your partner goes for the wrong target and you get knocked. So minor injuries are pretty common. I've never been seriously injured. I have twice punched my partner in the face, once on my basic, sorry Max, and that was entirely my own fault. I was not watching my distance properly. And once at advanced, sorry Jack, he claims that it was at least partially his fault because he leaned in which case I'm going to share the blame of that one, but still probably shouldn't have punched him in the face. Anyway, next question, what drills do you use for practice? We don't. I mean, like, personally, I've been taking fencing lessons recently, so I've been doing fencing related drills, but stage combat, you tend to practice the choreography that you're learning rather than any general thing, I guess. Or if you practice specific things, it's because you're having trouble with it. Like, you don't tend to get sent home with homework, if you see what I mean. You have to make up your own, or do the homework that comes from, say, martial arts or fencing or whatever. At least in my experience. Does stage combat... Okay, so this is actually a really common question. Does stage combat give you, like, muscle memory or something like combat training? Basically, it's how close is stage combat to real fighting? Would it actually be useful in a fight? And the answer to that is... let's go with mostly no. So if you have a spectrum where you have like street brawling over here and like martial arts somewhere here and stage combat over here somewhere, there are, lost my train of thought there. basically, the more formalized a martial art is, the less it's like straight brawling. And stage combat is even more formalized than that, because the whole point is not hurting your partner. There are some general principles which you can apply, like distance, for example, but it doesn't. I would not say that it would be a great thing to teach you anything particularly useful if you are a person who regularly or even occasionally gets into actual fights. As a person who does not get into actual fights basically at all, my, general principle being to like run away, or just like slide on out of there. I feel like it's probably got some useful applications somewhere, but it's not really, like, if you want to learn how to fight club fight, then stage combat is really not for you. And actually, if you enjoy hurting people, stage combat is not for you. Like, the whole point of it is that you're doing it so it looks impressive, but you don't actually hurt people. Just saying. I'm gonna check on this chat. Where is it? Where do you purchase your swords? Many places. Olivia McDonough, by the way, is one of my fight partners from last week. Hi, Liv. And is also in the chat answering some questions in a useful way. So that's pretty good. Hi, Liv. I was going to say sorry for hurting you, but I didn't, for the most part, except for that one time where I made you fall over your own cape. Sorry about that. Right, next question. We're on a roll here. Margot Robbie as Tanya Harding was really impressive. Ice skater. She had a stunt performer, but she also did a lot of the ice skating stuff herself. How does an actress go from no experience to being able to pull off such a professional degree, almost competitive level art form in a short space of time? I think the answer to that is Margot Robbie is kind of very physically capable. Like, she was a gymnast and a dancer, and some people who are very athletic and have really good control over their bodies are much quicker to pick up skills than people who aren't. So a question that is probably in the chat somewhere here is, does knowing martial arts make it easier to do stage combat? And the answer is yes, to a fairly significant degree. Not because you know the stage combat specific techniques, but because it's much easier for you to pick them up because you're already much more aware of what your body does and where it is in space than the average person is. I did not have any background in martial arts or dance or anything, and so I was just kind of like, yeah, learning. It's a steeper learning curve if you don't have that background in some kind of physical movement thing, is what I'm saying. In sword combat, how do you deal with someone that is much taller and has a longer reach? Is being taller a disadvantage since you're a bigger target? I would not think that being taller is a disadvantage because you're a bigger target. It's an advantage because, you do have a greater reach. Like, I don't know how you actually... What happens in stage combat? For example, I'm going to pick on Liv because she's in the chat. Liv is not very tall. She's shorter than me. She's possibly 4'11". She and I were both fighting Jack last week, who is at least 6 foot tall. And it basically means that Liv has to take 2 steps for every one of his. You have a much greater advantage when you have a longer reach. There are ways of mitigating that disadvantage, but you don't exactly learn those in stage combat. You learn the choreography, which may teach you things about them, but mostly the point is that you're learning the choreography. Are there any more in here? No, that is all the Patreon questions. Awesome. Let us get into the other questions. What is your favorite weapon and fighting style? I love Case of Rapiers. I love Case of Rapiers so much. It's, you get 2 swords, your partner gets 2 swords, you kind of flail at each other in an impressive way. It looks really cool. Your main thing is just like not getting tangled up. Where can you find places to do it? See the start of this video. Oh, there is one more thing I want to say on where you can find places to do it if you are not in any of the places listed, or if the place that you live doesn't have this stuff. On YouTube, there is a guy called Ian McCracken. And I'm just going to look them up because that seems like a good thing to do. So you can find videos on YouTube, but buyer beware is what I'm going for here. Buyer beware, because like there are lots of people who have, you know, credentials and know what they're talking about. There are lots of people who might not even have credentials who know what they're talking about. If you want the basics, you can probably learn the basics from the internet. If you want anything beyond the basics, if you want to be able to say that you know something as a qualification, if you are a working actor or if you would like that, then you kind of need people. Either you need in-person teaching, or there are some options for online learning with people who are accredited. I am not finding this thing. That's a bit annoying. Okay, well, we'll try and find it later and we'll drop it in the chat. But there are places on the internet where you can look for these things. Why is that not coming up? I don't know. Alright, well, we got a whole load of questions to get through, so let's keep going. Do you have characters from shows, games, or movies that inspire you to do stage fighting? Well, I did answer that. It's basically all Daisy Ridley and Adam Driver's fault. There you go. Was there a time you ever got too emotionally invested or flinched during a scene? Generally, no. I did once when we were doing Taming of the Shrew, Duncan and I. We were in my garden doing the preparation for it, and I was like, okay, and in this, he was like, this part, so you slap me, look away, I look back, and he took a step towards me, and I was like 3 steps back over the other side of the garden before I had thought about it. Like, my brain did not, you know, there was no conscious thought involved in there. I was just like, nope, bye. I think that's the closest I've ever come. I'm like, if I had just hit someone really hard in the face and they started towards me, I would be gone. So let's pretend that was, you know, a choreography. What's the phrase I'm looking for here? Like, my contribution to the choreography, as opposed to just something that happened and then my brain was like, oh yeah, so we're over here now? Okay, cool. Fine. It's fine. Is it worth it if you want to do it for fun? Yes. I mean, I started doing it for fun, and then it became my job, which was weird, but there we go. Always choreographed. Always choreographed. Do you need to know any martial arts? No. No, we don't. I didn't know a darn thing. Actually, that's not true. I had been to, like, 3 fencing classes about 10 years previously, so I could, you know, I knew what on guard was, and I could go forwards and backwards. That was what I knew, and I was fine. So, you'll be fine. Are there practical applications to stage fighting besides impressing your friends at parties? Making movies or staging theatre shows? Are cats good at stage fighting? No. Talk about making a living with stage combat. I don't. Well, I do, but I don't. Actors in general don't make a living from stage combat. Stage combat is just a thing that actors can do, which makes them more useful as actor, or more versatile as actors, or more flexible, or whatever. You can make a living as someone who choreographs fights, as a fight director, but that requires a whole lot more training than I have. Oh, thank you for the super chat, Aspen. Thank you for inspiring. Oh, that's so sweet. I appreciate that. Okay. Oh, hey, Aspen, it's your question. I would like to know how people can come involved in it. We did how to get into it, but has there ever been a time you wanted to quit? No, actually. Like, even the times when it's been really difficult and it's been like, I have not had adequate sleep and this is really difficult and I don't want to do this particular bit. I've never wanted to quit because it's really, really fun. And yeah, like I said, if you have a teacher who is like, if they push you a little bit, they're like, you can do this thing and I have faith in your capabilities, then that's cool. If they're like, suck it up and deal, then you're in the wrong place. You don't want that. Classic Clever. Singing. Yeah, maybe at some point. Not today. I have to talk for another 1 hour and 40 minutes, so let's see. We're doing pretty well, actually. What is the difference between stage combat for theatre and stage combat for film? Uh, right. I advise, and this is purely personal opinion here, that if you're learning if you want to learn stage combat for film, which is kind of what I was wanting to do when I got into it initially, I was like, that sounds really cool. I would advise that you learn stage combat for theater first, because it's all the same techniques, but you have to learn them. There are more techniques. Hang on, let me think about this a little bit. So, stage combat for film requires basically most of the same techniques as you learn in stage combat for theatre. But in theatre, you have to learn how to do entire fights at once. You have to learn to, cover your angles. You have to learn to nap. You have to learn a bunch of extra stuff. It is easier to go from theatre, where you have to know 100 things, and then move into film, where you maybe have to learn 10 new things, but you only have to learn 70 of those previous things, than the other way around, if you see what I mean. So, they're choreographed very differently, because theatre fights are obviously choreographed all in one piece. You have phrases in the fight, but it all has to be performed in one go, every night, and twice on Saturdays. Whereas in film, you can break it up into as many different sections as you want. You can cut every 2 seconds. I was watching Captain America: The Winter Soldier yesterday. Yeah, not really in love with modern fight editing, to be honest. It's in film you can do a lot more impressive things. In some ways it's a lot harder, because you can do more impressive things, but and they don't have to be repeatable, because you can do them once, cut, print, move on. But yeah, they're slightly different skill sets for the two. Theatre is the more difficult for actors to learn, and so I would advise that you learn that first, because it's easier to go from that one to film than the other way around. I love the fights in The Winter Soldier. I do too. I just wish we could see more of them. And also the wigs. The wigs are killing me. It's wonderful. Violent dance routine. Yes. That's what we need on a t-shirt. What are the differences between stage combat and professional wrestling? I don't know. From what I do know, pro wrestling seems to be like stage combat, but kind of more improvised, which is weird to me, but, it seems to work out, so whatever. But I actually don't know. Are there lightsaber stage combat classes? Probably. You can, probably not, like, officially, like, you can't be certified in lightsaber, but you can in various different kinds of sword, and so you can, if you learn the one that's closest, or one that is relatively close, then it's you can do a fight with lightsabers, just saying. How do I start? We did that one. How do you control your voice while lunging about? Excellent question. You generally don't. You generally don't. So what they tell you when you do a stage combat exam is you have to put a script into your fight. So Liv and I did The Incredibles. Hello from... Oh, thank you for the super chat. Do you act full time? No, I YouTube full time. Welcome to the internet. It's a great place. We did The Incredibles when Jack and Liv and I did Knife and Rope. We did a scene from Stardust, but you cut the scene up and you stick in the lines wherever it makes sense. But mostly you don't do lines in motion, because if you have swords and they're going ting ting ting, you can't hear anything over the top of that. So you tend not to talk. You fight, then talk, then fight, then talk, and you have to make it look natural rather than fighting and talking at the same time. Will this stay on your channel? Yes. No capes is the scene we did. Yes. Let's see. Are you really a stage combat expert, or is this a cunning facade to disguise the fact you're an international assassin? I'm actually Black Widow, but in real life, I even wore the top today. Do you pretend to be Errol Flynn? Not so far, but, the day is young, as it were. How close do you get to doing any damage? Usually not. In theatre especially, not at all would be the ideal answer to that. Because you have to do it over and over and over again. And even if you do a single contact hit, like a contact punch, you have something called reverse energy, which is basically like you punch in and then you snap back, and you kind of just boop. You boop your partner. However, if you do that in the same place every night for a couple of weeks, it's gonna get really, really bruised. So, yeah. Ideally, you don't get hurt at all. Usually, you only get mildly injured. Most of the injuries you do to yourself. Like muscle strains and stuff like that. Just saying. How do you sell being hit? How do you make it sound like someone has been hit? Napping. I'm really bad at napping, which is spelled K-N-A-P, by the way. You sell being hit by pretending that someone has hit you. You know, how hard have they hit you? Are you winded? Do you pretend to be winded? Have you lost your breath? Is it just like, is it a moment of shock? Like, you play the injury subsequent to getting the injury, depending on how severe it is? Or is it just like you get something and you're so high on adrenaline, or your character is, that they just ignore it? You make the noise by napping, which is basically like either you clap or you actually hit them and you like clap against their torso or whatever. Or my personal favorite, my personal least favorite is the one that you have to do most often. So if you have so if you take a guard stance up by your cheekbones but away from the face, this is not ideal in a real life situation, but on stage you need to see this is the moneymaker, as they say. So if you jab, for example, which I'm going to do very slowly because I don't want to hit anything, you nap at the same time, or somebody does, so you're like, right? If the audience are behind me, I nap. If my partner is, my partner has their back to the audience, they do that while they react, or whatever. Napping. I'm really bad at napping. I love when we do film stuff because it means you don't have to nap. You can just add in the sound effect later, but that's generally how you do it. There's also like an uppercut, where if you do the uppercut, but like your partner has their hand here and you clap on the way up, and then you have to bring your fist back up, so it looks like, it's really difficult to do, but it looks so cool. You may have inspired me to pursue stage combat. Amazing. What is your favorite method for a convincing stage slap or punch? There's generally only one. I like jabs rather than the other kind. I like jabs rather than any other kind of punches because they're the easiest ones for me to sell convincingly. Like, my hook punches just look really ugly for reasons that I haven't quite figured out. But thank you for the super chat. Right, let's keep going. How do you learn it? We did that one. When are you going to do a series on Marvel combat moves? Show us the Black Widow legs and neck attack. Well, first of all, I'm not sure that one is actually within my current capabilities, though it does look like fun. Also, it came in 5 different shots, and it hurt my feelings a bit, because I know that it's a stunt woman, I know, but, like, please stop cutting all the way around her so that you can't see her. It hurts my feelings. After watching a video on receiving your distinctions, how would you progress through this track, earning what you did? Hold on. Okay, basically, what is the history of stage combat? How did it get certified? How did it become a thing that you can be certified in? Excellent question. Don't really know the answer, though. Think it probably starts, well, in 1957. 1957 is a year I plucked out of my head, but it's probably approximately right. Anyway. What's up with martial arts movies where they fight and kind of float through the air? How are they filmed, and how do you feel about them? Haven't seen many of them. And also, it's spelled wuxia, but it's not pronounced like that. Like, it's pronounced wuxia or something. Anyway, haven't really seen a lot of them, but they look really cool. I love them in a sort of stylized way. Not my favorite sort of style, but, you know, I can appreciate it for itself. Like, you're not even trying to obey the laws of gravity, and I respect that. How is stage fighting different from HEMA? How are safety considerations taken into account? Good question. In stage fighting, you wear basically no protective gear at all. My number one tip if you're starting stage combat, especially if you've never done anything like this before and you're doing sword work, is gloves. I use horse riding gloves. I don't so much anymore, but they're gloves, just like cycling gloves, some kind of glove on your dominant hand. Because if you're like me and you don't really know much about swords and you're not particularly physically adept or indeed strong, you have a tendency to grip too tightly when you start. Like, you grip really tightly because it feels heavy after a long time, even though it's quite light. And you start taking the skin off like the inside of your hand, and you start getting calluses. Not like the kind of calluses that are useful, the kind that just sort of hurt. Maybe that's blisters. Whatever. The point is, if you're just starting and you're not really sword adept, gloves. But we wear no protective gear whatsoever. We wear workout clothes. I mean, we wear shoes and we take our jewelry off. But the reason for that is everything is choreographed, and you shouldn't be doing things if you're not looking at your partner. You're not supposed to do anything unless you have eye contact with your partner, or for at least most of the time. And so they know what's coming and they know what you're doing. And you don't, I want to say you don't aim to hit them. That's not exactly true. When you do a cut, for example, if you're aiming for their head, you cut, or so you're aiming for their shoulder. So you cut and you aim to stop it here. So even if they forget to parry, the worst you're going to do is kind of bounce off them with a blunt fencing sword. If you are cutting to their head, which is not something that you do a lot, you do it less as you do it less when you're less experienced. Do I know you take my money? Okay, thanks. Don't want to take all your money, but $5 is great. You look at that. You have to have eye contact. They have to start ducking before you bring a sword over their head, for example. Are shields a thing in stage combat? Yes, actually. They're one of the things you can be certified in. Okay. Going up. We don't wear protective gear, but we choreograph things very carefully, and you shouldn't be hitting them in a way that will do them any more than, like, bruising. Oh, thanks, Helen. Any relation between stage combat and sport fencing? Are the skills transferable? Judging from Jack, who's a fencing instructor, yes, very transferable. Not in the opposite direction, though, as I'm finding. Or, no, a little bit in the opposite direction. Stage combat, you make everything bigger than it needs to be. Sport fencing, you're actually trying to hit your opponent as opposed to trying to make it look like you're hitting your partner. So everything is bigger because you need to sell it to someone who's over there, like at the back of the auditorium, which apparently is over the other side of my office, which is not actually a very long way away, but you get the idea. So yes, many of the skills are transferable. The stance for stage combat is a little bit different. You make all of your movements bigger. You obviously aren't actually trying to outfox your opponent because it's your partner. You're trying to make each other look good. But there's some overlap there. To what extent can realism help, and to what extent can it hinder storytelling in stage combat? It depends on your story, to be honest. Like, what are you trying to achieve with it? I once got hit on the head with a blunt axe during a production of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. I'm not really keeping up with this chat, but every time I look, there's gold in there, so I hope the rest of you are enjoying it. Realism is great. Realism is a tool which you have in your toolbox. If you're telling a gritty, realistic story, it would be weird if they suddenly went all, flying through the air with the greatest of ease. If you're telling a fantastical pantomime story, it would be weird if they suddenly had, like, a really gritty, realistic knife fight. It's a tool, and you should use it if you think it is useful, basically. Would you ever try recreating one of your favorite or most critiqued fights? I would love to have a try at the fight in The Princess Bride, which is Inigo and Wesley. Would really enjoy that. And incidentally, I would like to be Inigo, not Wesley, because that would mean that I only have to use my left hand for, like, the first third of it, as opposed to for 2/3 of it. But there we are. As a stage combatant, what does your job actually entail? Keep it up. Thank you for the super chat, Charles. Okay, so again, stage combatant is not a job. It's a tool in an actor's toolbox. I happen to have made it a job by talking about it on the internet. I'm weird though, so you shouldn't think that I'm in any way normal. That's a question that we've had before. That's a question. That's not a question. How do you choreograph gritty fight scenes? Things that sorry, tried to read and that didn't work. Okay. Gritty fight scenes. Things happen less. People break apart. If you want it to last a longer time, people break apart more. Injuries really, really, really hurt. Not in real life, obviously, but you play the pain much more. And, when people get hurt, they really, things get disabled, I guess. I guess from a camera work perspective, I always associate being in closer with sort of more of the gritty, realistic feel, right? As opposed to, like, people being way out. Things which are very smooth movesets feel less realistic, even if they are. I tried doing stage combat a decade ago. Thank you for the super chat, Brendan. Had entirely the wrong traumas and skills for it. Oh, thank you. And thank you for the thingy. How do you do a death stab well? Depends where you're aiming for. Liv and I had to do a double kill with rapiers, which basically meant that I parried her with a cloak, and so had the tip of her sword in my hand. She did the same to me, and then we pushed each other's wrists back, and then pulled them into ourselves. Thank you for the super chat, Alexander. Keep up the good work. Thank you. I will endeavour to do so. Are ranged weapons a thing? Like bows or prop guns? Prop guns, yes, but you don't... sort of firearm stuff is separate to stage combat stuff. You can learn firearm stuff, but it's not generally certified by the same people. Let's see. Answer that one. Swords? Swords. Do you have any experience of competitive martial arts or fencing? Like, I've had 5 fencing lessons now. You will all be pleased to know that I'm not actually losing my hearing, because I went fencing on Monday and I was like, I can't hear anything that anybody's saying to me. As it turns out, I'm not going deaf. My hearing is fine. It's just that wearing a fencing mask which covers your ears, and then the other person is wearing a cloth mask which covers their mouth, and then you're in a sports hall which is really echoey. It just meant that I couldn't hear anything. So, not losing my hearing. Competitive martial arts, no. Like 20 years ago, which, yeah, I took judo for a little while. I was really bad at judo, though it was kind of fun. But no, mostly I do stage combat, and then I was like, maybe I should, like, do some fencing, because I feel it would improve the stage combat. And I think it will. Just not yet. Gotta get good enough first. Nicole, cheers and Azad, my fellow D&D chicks. Fair. I'd love to see a compare and contrast of stage versus film. So would I, but probably not in this Q&A. How to make it real without actually hurting the players. It's all in the reaction. Like, of all the things that you have to do, the reaction is the most important thing. Like, there's no point in someone doing a really complicated set of moves and then, aha, stabbing you, and you're like, ow. It's all in the reaction. Jill's not done pro wrestling since... Yeah. I have not done any kind of pro wrestling. He's being funny. Thank you for putting voting and always putting an option in for people who like voting. You're welcome. How much does it all cost? Depends. So it's like the week-long course gets you certified in 3 weapons and costs about £600, though you get all your food with that too. You can go on shorter courses, which are like 2 or 3 days, which are under £200, but they do not include like food or accommodation. Depends. Other boards, I have done basically all of mine with APC and ACT, which are on the less expensive side. But I know the SAFD, for example, has like scholarship funds for some things, for some kinds of... I'm not entirely sure, but it varies is what I'm saying. But like a couple of £100 for a course seems like a reasonable thing. There are also one-day workshops which don't necessarily get you qualification, but they are useful and teach you things. So, good night, Sabine. Why does your internet hate me? I don't know. I mean, mine, I sometimes feel mine hates me. Nargon, favorite way to stage fall? Forwards, backwards, sideways. Mine's backward, personally. Yeah, I find backwards the easiest. My favorite way to stage fall is to get other people to do it, as Jack will attest. Like, who wants to die? I was like, not it. Because obviously you have to practice it quite a lot. I did a Joe staff at intermediate, and I had to die by dropping to my knees, which I did not well onto hard floors, and my knees swelled up horribly. It was a time. What is your favorite move that is entirely impractical in real combat but looks really cool on stage? That's too hard a question. I don't know. I really enjoy... I do quite enjoy the Canadian Shuffle, which is not a move, it's a series of 4 moves which can be repeated back and forth forever. It's basically when you have a single sword and you go for target, you go poke, 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 or similar. I don't even know if that's the right way around for you because I don't know which way this camera is. But you go for 4 targets and your partner parries, and then they come from that last parry and they go for your 4 targets in the same order, and you just can go forwards and backwards, and it looks like you know what you're doing, and yet it's actually quite easy. So there was a question which I saw further up, which was like, what's really hard to do that you have to do all the time, and like. That's kind of the opposite way around to the way we want things. We want things which are relatively straightforward but look really impressive, rather than things which are really technically difficult but look easy. Strange. How much does it all cost? What is the structure to becoming a pro? So, like, if you mean fight director, like, there are a whole bunch of exams, and first of all you have to become a teacher. There's like a path to that, which is usually via apprenticeship, which you have to pay for, and then teaching, and then getting qualifications in fencing and a martial art and stage combat itself. And then if you want to be an equity registered fight director, then you have to read a bunch of books and take a bunch more exams. If you just want to be an actor combatant, then you just take a bunch of exams, and if you pass enough of them to a certain standard, then that's you. Actor combatant. Well done. The first cardinal rule of perm maintenance is you're forbidden to wet your hair for at least 24 hours. What is the first cardinal rule of stage combat? It's be safe. Be safe! That's basically it. Like, the whole point is we're trying to make it look like we're killing each other. We don't actually want to. So be safe, be convincing, and if you can't do something, speak up. Like, always tell people. If you have some kind of physical limitation, they can work around anything, but you have to tell them first. What brought you to Christianity? Jesus. There we go. How would one approach... No, we did that one. Is there a way to get into stage combat if you don't live near somewhere that teaches it? Yes, kind of the internet, but only really for the very basics. If you want to get into stage combat and there's nothing near you, martial arts will probably be your best bet, and then trying to learn the theatrical techniques from the internet. But really there is no substitute for either in-person teaching, or sometimes I know some teachers do kind of online courses, or they did during lockdown, so that's a possibility. Most fun and most terrible parts of stage combat. The most fun parts are the bits where you do a run or a performance and it all goes extremely well and it's just magic. Or also watching other people do that thing, actually. Like, watching other people nail a piece of choreography that you know is actually really tricky. That's really nice, because it's a very supportive place. Like, it's not a competition. You're all there to be supporting each other. Have you or anyone you know ever gotten hurt during stage combat? Yes. Although, again, mostly because we have done something stupid. Like, we haven't said that something was hurting, or we've pushed ourselves too hard and strained our own muscles. What's been your toughest fight to perform? Intermediate level 18th century smallsword. Never have I ever had something that was so technically challenging to me. Also, I'd had quite a week. So, like, I took intermediate 18th century smallsword. After, it went like this. Friday, fly to Lithuania. Saturday, give a talk at a convention in Lithuania. Such a nice time. Such lovely people. Also Saturday, see that there was like a HEMA demonstration thing at said convention. Decide to give it a go. Get smacked so hard on the leg that I got a bruise, like the exact size and shape of Aladdin's lamp from the Disney film. Like, it was that exact shape. It was weird. Sunday evening, fly home from Lithuania, arrive home at 11 o'clock, discover the boiler was broken, go to sleep, wake up the next morning, fix the boiler. Monday, that was Monday, take the train to Deal, and then spend 3 days doing an unarmed course. Thursday, tidy up. Friday, spend all day on a train. Saturday and Sunday, learn 18th century smallsword in Liverpool, which required like a 45-minute commute in either direction. So I feel like it probably wasn't the sword work itself which was the problem. It was like trying to do it at the end of the end of a fairly intense period. 43. Hi, thanks for the super chat. I love that Liv is in the chat, like, laying it down for you here. It's wonderful. You should listen to Liv. She knows many things. She is also an actor combatant as of last week. She is also the one who you hit me in the head with nunchucks once, Liv. Is that right? I mean, that was also my fault because I literally just forgot to duck. I was fine, but yeah, we did a fight from The Mummy Returns. My fight director who taught my class used a speed system to teach our sequence, speed starting at 1 working up to 10. Is that how you learn? We do something similar, but I've mostly forgotten it over the years because I tend to have partners who don't go slowly very well. I also don't go slowly very well, but we try it. We try. Anyway, stop by to drop a like. Thank you. The Mummy with nunchucks. Yes, we laid out a whole bunch. We got all of the weapons that all of the people were using for the week. And we started the scene with me picking up the size, Liv picking up the size and me being like, no, let's not scar that pretty face, and picking up the nunchucks, and then we did a nunchuck fight, and then we both fell down. It was fun. What do you do about fights that go off script? I'm not entirely sure what that means. Like, if you run out of choreography, like you forget what the choreography is, that's why you learn it in phrases, you just circle a bit and then reset to the thing that you remember. You don't want to improvise. That's why we go back to we go back to the last thing you remember. So generally, phrases start in a different position. If you have swords, especially, often you'll start each phrase in a different guard to make it easier to know which one you're doing. But yeah, you go back to the last thing you remember. And you do that again, because the audience won't know unless you break character. So don't break character, just go back a bit, do it again. There's a question here about Star Trek and the evolution of stage combat between Star Trek and Deep Space Nine, which is really interesting, but also like an entire video by itself, I feel like. So, there we are. Improvised stage combat equals ouch. Yes. Very precisely. Is there how are the fights choreographed? What's taken into account? How are the movements and the beats of the fight chosen? So many things. Right, so you've got the scene. For exams, it's different because they give you choreography and then you put the scene around it, so it's kind of backwards, but if a fight director comes in to your production or your movie or whatever and you're like, here is the fight, here's the scene, here are the characters, here's what they want, here's what they don't want, here's what has to happen by the end of the scene, here are, I don't know, the injuries that I need them to have for dramatic effect or for later on in the movie or whatever, here are the weapons I want them to use, go. And so you then work out from there what you want, what order it happens in, and also what your actors can do. Because it's all very well coming in and being like, right, we're going to do X, and then finding out that your actors can't do X, either because they haven't learned it or because they have some kind of injury which prevents it or whatever. So you need to know what your actors can do, you need to know if it's a film, if you have stunt performers and what they're prepared to do, and you kind of go from there. You kind of work in, like, you work in the dramatic beats as part of the phrases, like who's winning, who's losing, who's got the upper hand, who's just lost their weapon, who's been injured, what's happening, it goes like that. It's very difficult to explain, and I don't do a lot of fight choreographing, or really any. I just sort of, I'm at the point where I just like make suggestions, as opposed to actually doing any fight choreographing myself. Like, what about this? Or if it's an exam choreography, I don't know if that necessarily works. Maybe this works better, or possibly we just do it wrong and then we're like, this works better though. Can we just do this? Not that we do that very often, obviously. I was wondering about animated fights. Do animators use actual stage fighting techniques? I would imagine if you're using if you're basing it on motion capture, then they're going to be using stage fighting techniques. If you're basing it on just like drawing stuff and you're making it up out of your head, then you can just use real fighting techniques because your characters can't actually get hurt because they're not real, which is handy. What was it like when you first said, this is what I want to do with my life? What was your first class in stage combat like? Those are actually two different questions. But my first class in stage combat, we learned to hold a sword and go forwards and backwards and sideways and things. It was really fun. I was in a lot of... Actually, the very first thing we did on my stage combat course was, like, rolling, as in learning to roll with crash mats. And that was when I learned that you shouldn't try and keep up with 22-year-olds with martial arts backgrounds when you're 32. You should pace yourself. Excuse me, because I woke up the next day extremely sore. It hurt a lot. Anyway... when did I decide this is what I want to do with my life, as in make videos about stage combat? Like 18 months after I started making, 18 months after I started stage combat, when my friend was like, hey, you know how you talk about this like all the time? Why don't you talk about it in a video? Because I feel like you have a reasonably unique perspective on combat in movies. There are a lot of people who make videos about fights in movies, but I feel like your perspective is different enough that would be interesting. Tim, thank you for the super chat. Have I missed a video you've done on the Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon weapons room fight? No, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon is on the list though. But as you can probably tell, like I have many lists, and it's definitely on the definitely going to do list. Though I'm not sure if it's going to be the weapons room fight particularly. That is a good one though. But I do like one major video a month, sometimes two. So it takes a while. I get there, but it takes a while. Tips for people new to stage combat: bring water, drink water, love water, don't overdo it, pace yourself if you're on a 3-day course. The purpose of a warm-up is to warm up, not to try and keep up with the instructor. They're all mad. Lovely people, but mad. What shoes would you say are ideal for stage combat? I like Converse, or like fake Converse, also trainers, but anything flat and sturdy, basically. It's easiest to learn in trainers, basically, because everybody else will be learning in trainers. You can fight in a lot of different kinds of costume and a lot of different kinds of shoes, but it's easiest to learn in the things which are actively supporting you doing athletic activity. How many years have you done this? 3 now. I took my first stage combat course 3 years ago, like last week. Funniest moment. Oh, thank you, Aiden. We will see you later. Was the funniest moment? Well, like being hit in the head with nunchucks was pretty entertaining. Especially as I caught it on camera, so you can hear the instructor. All you hear is thwack and me going ow, and then Martin going cut. Like mostly entertaining minor injuries are the things that I enjoy, but I have to say some of the scenes we've done have been pretty good. I did enjoy No Capes very much. What is stage combat? Is it related to Mortal Kombat? Sadly not. We've answered that question already. You know, a lot of people wanted to know about the practicality of stage combat in real life situations. There you go. Are there levels that are predefined to determine efficiency and skill? Yes, they kind of vary between boards, as it were, but everybody has their own kind of ranking system, like certification system. And if you have actor combatant, for example, that means something to everybody. It No Caves has been my favorite scene so far. Liv, what about the scene with the silly string? Which wasn't even me. It was Revenge of the Sith. They did Mace Windu and Emperor Palpatine, and she got chucked over a box with silly string, and it was amazing. It was like my favorite thing. Anyway, have you ever done a pirate scene where your character had a missing limb? No, but that sounds like quite interesting. Organization in North America, SAFD, Fight Directors Canada. Difficult moves that's quite common. Nothing is springing to mind. What do you often put first, style or realism? I prefer style, honestly. Like, I like a bit of fanciness in my fight choreography. Also, I don't really like, the realism stuff tends to come with the things that are, what am I saying here? Like, rated 18 and really gritty and lots of people die and everything's miserable. And I'm like, no, I quite like it when everyone's happy at the end, so, like, Does having these qualifications for a film or TV show mean there's a difference in insurance? I don't think so. I mean, this might be different in different places, but no. Your fight director having qualifications does make an insurance difference, at least in the UK, because people who are certified stage combat instructors or equity registered fight directors, which is like way up there, their fight choreography is covered under their equity, that's the actors union, their equity insurance, like their public liability something. But for actors it doesn't really make much of a difference, unless you're on the stunt register. That makes a difference for like insurance, but just being an actor who can do fighty things doesn't make an insurance difference. It might make a better film, but doesn't really help insurance-wise, I don't think. What stage combat moves should be known by everyone for day-to-day use? Realism with Disney on the side, or the other way around? Disney with realism on the side, definitely. The idea of dramatically slapping my friends when I meet them seems far more fun than a special handshake. Yeah, I mean, we generally go for like face punching, but you have to nap. It's very important that you make the noise and that your friend goes, ah, otherwise just not the same, really. Favorite example of fight in a book which you could visualize into an onstage duel? I would love to see something with like loads of wire work. I'm not sure, you'd have to have a very big stage, but I would love to see a Mistborn fight with like wire work and ribbons. And, like, something between the Ember Island players and Peter Pan, basically, is what I'm going for here. I would really enjoy that, I think. I saw you put a corset on for the training. Yes, I got a couple of dudes in the comments were like, what did you do? What is with the women and the corset? I was like, my back hurt. And I thought to myself, one, I need somewhere to store my knife, and none of my workout clothes have pockets. So I just like put it down the front of the corset, very helpful. And two, my lower back was aching on the Tuesday, so I wore the corset on the Wednesday and the Thursday and the Friday for most of my fights, and was like, yes, this helps. I like this. I hate wirefu. Well, that's fair enough. I like it under some circumstances and not on others. When do you start wearing your final costume? Depends on the production, but I find it better, like when we did Jekyll and Hyde, which I did not do any fighting in, but we did do, dance and movement related things. We didn't have what is quite common in musicals, which are called rehearsal skirts, which are basically things with a big hoop on them so that you know how much space you're going to take up in your actual costume. Have you ever tried fencing? Yes, I have. I'm on to like lesson number 6, and I'm gonna have to take a break now because I'm in a play, and so Monday nights I now belong to my director. But it's a lot of fun. I'm enjoying it. It's really hard though. It's much harder than stage combat, or I perceive it as being much harder than stage combat because I've been doing stage combat for several years, and so I'm kind of better at that. So like I already got over the bit where it's really really hard and you don't feel like you're making any progress, and we're still in there with fencing. So we're getting there. Do stuntmen get taught by stage fighters? Depends. And like in a fight similar to the Blaviken fight in The Witcher, are they all stage fighters? So stuntmen can be, stuntmen are usually, you know, fight trained as well. I think that's a requirement for being on the stunt register. So stunts is another level of something else on top of that, and kind of different. It's like its own thing, which I don't know a great deal about. But yeah, how do you make a Hellberg fight make 45 minutes? How do you make a Hellberg fight take 45 minutes? I don't even understand the words which are in this question, so I'm not going to answer it. Possibly someone in the comments can answer the question, because You've spoken a lot about how aspects of movie fight scenes are obviously very impractical, and real fighting can be excused if they serve the narrative or character building. Are there any non-footwear or costuming related movie fighting tropes you just can't overlook? Like, I'll give most things a go once. When are you going to train in the joust? Watch this space for possibly over the next couple of years for that, but I know a guy. Anyway, I can't think of anything that isn't footwear or costuming related, to be honest. Most of my pet peeves revolve around that. Are there any activities like martial arts or working out and fitness that you should do before you start stage combat? Like, martial arts, helpful. Fencing, also helpful. Just being fitter, helpful. Anything that increases your awareness of your body, helpful. So, like, even being really good at dance, that will probably make you better at stage combat than, say, a rando who just walked off the street like I did. What do you think about the potential to combine it with other performance types? Combatant drag performance. Well, like, stage combat is stage combat. You can combine it with anything you like. You can combine it with drag or mime or contemporary dance. I don't really know. You can combine it with everything. And I think that, you know, pretending to beat people up adds a certain something to all kinds of theatre, so I'm all for it. You need to like light or non-brutal stuff. Yeah. How do you combine it with stage fighting? Do you try and make it less brutal, or does the level of violence suit you? When you work with someone, are they usually darker or on the same page as you? I tend to pick lighter scenes, and then yeah, I do tend to pick lighter scenes, and generally drag my partners along with me. Not always, but it's I prefer comedic stage combat to the kind where everybody dies at the end dramatically, but mostly people are reasonably willing to accommodate me, which is nice. Like, we've done some darker ones, and, you know, people do die pretty frequently in stage combat exams, including me, of a time, but it doesn't bother me when I'm doing it, usually, and also, you don't have, like, blood and gore effects in stage combat exams, generally, so, it doesn't freak me out too much. Are those tight superhero costumes practical? I don't know. I mean, if they're 4-way stretch, probably not too impractical. If they're 2-way stretch, it's gonna hurt. Just saying. How often does a stage combat troupe perform publicly? I don't think I've ever heard of a stage combat troupe, but that would be cool. What is the most unexpected thing you learned about learning stage combat you didn't expect before going into the hobby? Okay. It's this. I did not expect that you'd have to spend so much time gazing at complete strangers. As someone who's quite introverted, like, I'm perfectly happy to stare at the camera. I'm reasonably good at that now. I've been doing it for a long time, but it was really disconcerting to have to stare at people for extended periods of time for like a whole week. I'm more used to it now, but it still kind of makes me and because of all of this staring at people. I tend to get very kind of attached to my stage combat partners. I'm like, no, precious baby, I must protect you from all of the mean people. So like, the fastest way to get muted on this channel is to say something mean about one of my stage combat partners, because I'm pretty much immune to people saying mean things about me nowadays, but I'm like, nope, bye. Yes, because they're nice and you shouldn't abuse them, and just so you know. There we go. This may be an odd question. How do you convey kinetics and emotions without making it seem too dramatic? I think that's the degree of reaction, basically. The emotions are the... Hang on. The emotions of the acting out of the character. I'm curious how it is that people act out fights, namely dramatic fights, without thinking, this is a little silly, why are they talking, shouldn't they just want to kill each other? I think it's the combination of the writing, the acting, and the verisimilitude. Like, if the tone of your film is more ridiculous than you are, or is less serious, then you're more likely to think that it's okay. Like, if you're having if you made a movie about a gritty murder happening on a council estate and it involved rapier and cloak, that would not work, for example. But I think it's the combination of things that makes it kind of okay. We can't bully Liv, that's Jill's job. Exactly. Have you done combat with all the fake blood and makeup and stuff? No. Like, when I was in NerdQuest, I was not one of the characters who got fake blood effects, shall we say. So that was handy. But no, for exams, there are specific exams you can do with other boards, I think, which have, fake blood and stuff as something you can learn about. But for general exams, we just pretend. We sometimes use polo mints to simulate neck breaking. So you just, like, stick a polo mint in your mouth and you're like... That's how we get there. Right. How do you handle safety issues when stage directions require an item of clothing to be cut open or off mid-fight? I don't know. I would imagine Velcro. I would imagine Velcro, but I don't actually know, because that seems more of a... Yeah, it seems like you would need a quick release kind of thing on that, so that because you don't actually want to tear anything, because you have to reuse it. So my guess is Velcro, but that seems like a costuming question. Are stage weapons lighter or the same weight as normal weapons? Usually... Okay, so common things we use. Epee blades, like fencing quality epee blades on stuff, because they're manufacturers who are very high standard, they're light, they go swoosh, and they're pretty difficult to break. I have previously broke a foil blade a couple of weeks ago at my fencing class, but it was a pretty old one, so it's fine. When we fought with arming swords, like, they're made of plastic, but they weigh roughly the same. They might be a bit lighter than, like, metal ones would have been, but usually they're either the same weight or they're a bit lighter. But we use a lot of, like, fencing blades. Like, those aren't rapiers. Like, yes, I know. Do you know why? Rapiers are expensive and heavy and much harder to maneuver than an epee blade. So live with it for the most part, especially on stage where you might have less money. How does a difference in height between combatants compare advantages? In stage combat terms, it's kind of the other way around to normal. If you have 4'11" Liv fighting 6'1" Jack, it's like, people don't like small women getting the snot beat out of them by large men in general, and so if you are a small woman in a stage combat fight, it's more likely that you're gonna win, or at least draw, or at least end the fight in an amusing fashion, because, like, we root for the underdog naturally. That is a thing that tends to happen. So if you're smaller in a stage combat fight, it's more likely you get to win more, just from a dramatic dramatic satisfaction point of view. A bit of history of... I don't understand that question. I think it's like an entire video by itself about the history of stage combat. If you're... There was somebody who asked about Shakespeare. There is a book called The Method and Practice of Elizabethan Swordplay, which is quite interesting on fights in Shakespeare's time, if you're looking for that. I don't have a specific question. Useful. Movies like to put in extra sound. You do that on stage. Yes, it's called napping. We talked about it. When did we talk about it? A while ago. I don't remember. The swords are, of course, fake. Is it still dangerous when hitting someone? You can't... People have died doing stage combat. Usually because something that shouldn't have gone near their face went near their face. However, with fencing blades, which are what we generally use, I remember doing a rehearsal for, I think it was Small Sword, and my partner had a little bit of trouble remembering the opening moves of the choreography. Like, once we got into it, it was fine, but tended to forget the first move. So the first move was me aiming for his shoulder, so I did, and he didn't move, he didn't parry, he didn't do anything, and so I just went, boop, and stabbed him in the shoulder. With a blunt blade, obviously it didn't hurt him, like he might have had a little mark, but... So I stopped, he stopped, we both looked at the teacher and she said, should have parried. So generally speaking, even if you hit someone with your weapon, you should have it under enough control that you aren't actually going to hurt them. You might boop them a bit. Do you participate in any plays as a stage combatant? No. So I've done a lot of stage combat. I've been in some plays. I've been in a movie or in a short or two, but these things have not yet combined, which is sad. But we'll get there, I'm sure. How much does the stage combatant's personality impact the fight choreography? Generally not, or. I mean, maybe a bit, but it should be the character's personality impacting the fight choreography, not the actor. Like, because your physical capabilities and the things that you're comfortable doing will maybe impact the choreography, but your personality shouldn't have much to do with it, because you're not being you're being someone else. What sort of maneuvers are more difficult than a layman would expect? I really hate hip throws. They're actually easier than... might think, but yeah, I still can't. I can throw people bigger than me. I can't throw people who are very significantly bigger than me. Put it like that. Like tall, skinny men, no problem. Short, regular size men, no problem. Regular size men who are also stockily built men who are also tall. Still no. Working on it. I'd like to see how practical swordplay differs, particularly from a Western fencing style. Well, that is what HEMA is for, my friend. They're very good at that. Professional wrestling? Nope. How do you... These are not questions. How does choreography with non-weapon weapons differ from that used with real weapons? So generally those are called found weapons fights, and they... I already answered that one, Lily. Quite near the beginning, actually, because it was one of your first questions. So when you have spoons or scarves or whatever, it's called found weapons, and usually that means that the fight is either more comedic or more desperate. Like, you can have a formalized duel with swords, but you generally don't have a formalized duel when one person is wielding a statuette and one of them has a pot. So the tone of it's going to be really different, but the thing is, there are only so many things you can do with a weapon. You can stab with it, depending. You can slice with it. You can swing with it. It's the weapon itself that makes it different rather than the moves that you do with it. I mean, obviously you're not going to stab with a frying pan, but you take my point. Do you find people with previous martial arts training pick up stage combat quicker? Usually, yes. In my experience. Jackie Chan is great with found weapons choreography. He is. If I wanted to make a flowy cape for battle, what fabric do you recommend? Something that isn't too sorry, noises. Like there's a skip in my back. There's a skip in my front garden. And I don't know if someone's gonna like come and pick it up at some point, but yeah, it's gonna be a time. Anyway, I forgot what question that was on. Hold on. Jackie Chan just seems like he gets attacked 24/7. Yep. To what extent do you train people for particular scenes? I don't. How long does it take for someone to get the movements down? Well, you can learn, well, if you are at specialization level, then you will learn a 50 move fight to the point that you can perform it in front of an audience supposedly in like a couple of days. The less experienced you are, the longer it takes, and the less moves you do, and the less the less complicated they are. Like as you progress up the levels, you not only have to do longer fights, you also have to like put on a better performance, and the moves in the fights have to be more complex. Hi Dorian. If you played Mistborn's Vin on stage, what movement would you most look forward to? You got cloak experience. I do. I would like the flying through the air with the greatest of ease. Like just the ability to leave the ground would be super cool. Have you ever worked with someone who didn't have the coordination required for what was asked of them? Yes, me. And in those cases, you just change the choreography. Or rather, your fight director changes the choreography. Like, if you can't do something safely, they'll just do something else. They'll just be like, right, well, we are here, we need to get to here, we were going to do X, but that isn't going to work, so we'll do Y instead. In my case, I could not hip throw my partner. At my basic level thing, I tried to do it, and then I cried. It was not a fun time. I was just like, I can't, like, technically, I'm not able to do this with this person, and physically speaking, I feel like I'm gonna break my own leg. So they were like, right, well, he needs to be on the ground, so instead of doing the hip throw, we're gonna do this. You're gonna put him in a wrist lock or something, and like a leg sweep, or we did something else. Jill looks 12 when she cosplays Vin. True facts. Where is the lie, as the kids say? Is there a crossover between stage and film? Yes. You plan it out with the cameras as audience instead of people. Also, yes. Things tend to be smaller in film choreography compared to stage because you don't have to be seen by the people at the back. But there's a lot of overlap, as I said. Most fun move that you gotta do. There were some pretty fun ones with rapier and cloak. There was a really nice one that we did in our saber fights, which was like just sweeping the blade through the air in a swooshy fashion. Unfortunately, after like a week of doing it, I just looked so tired. Like on day 1, it looked beautiful, and on day 5, I just looked so done. Because the cavalry sabers are heavier than fencing sabers, and I was just like, oh, I'm holding myself up through sheer force of will right now. Are you ever tempted to murder your fellow performers and make it look like a terrible accident? No, actually. And I feel like this is not unusual, but I've never had a bad partner. And the definition that I have of bad partner is someone who, basically, it doesn't matter how good you are at stage combat. Like, not being very good at it is fine, because I was also not very good at it at one point, and now I'm better at it, and that's okay. The thing that makes you a bad partner is either, like, is just having a bad attitude. So if they don't want to be there, and they don't seem to like you, and they don't want to work at it, and they don't want, no. Like, shush Jill, you looked awesome. Well, thank you. Like, Liv likes me. People who don't want to be there are bad partners. And possibly I would be more tempted to murder them than I would, like, regular people, because, like, when your adrenaline gets running, all of your emotions become more. But I have never had one of those to date, which is a very wonderful thing. Are you sure, Jill? Well, there was this little blonde called Liv. Very annoying. We did some yeah, anyway. She knows I love her, really. Okay. How real is the armor in movies? Generally not very, which is kind of both nobody's fault and everybody's fault. Like, it's Most people don't know anything about armor. Most costumers don't really know anything about armor. You know, actors don't, and if fight choreographers don't, then you can choreograph a whole load of fighting and stuff, and this is why people get slashed with a sword while wearing full plate armor and fall down, because someone was like, you need to do this fight scene, and someone makes the fight scene, and they're like, this guy's wearing plate armor, that wouldn't work. Oh well, you know, if you slash someone with a sword while they're in full plate armor, is that going to, you know, like across the breastplate, is that going to kill them and make them fall over? Probably not, but oh well. How to keep everyone safe during practice. Eye contact. You go slow when you start and you build your speed up. More eye contact and communication. Like, if you're having a hard time, just take a break. Like, just take 5. Get water. Whatever. Plate armor made out of crockery plates. Yes. That sounds terrible. Why don't stunt performers have an Oscar category? I don't know, but I think they should. Good stage fight, like a well choreographed dance scene. Yes, though ideally you do want to feel like it's a dance scene in which people are in imminent danger. How many different types are there? Fist, sword, dagger. What's the hardest to learn? There are lots and lots of different types. So unarmed is an area all of its, so unarmed is an area all of its own. So there's not just unarmed, there's different kinds of unarmed, like say MMA style or Regency boxing style or whatever. Unarmed is the overarching category. Single sword is what you call it at the standard or basic level, which is basically fencing swords, which come in various different flavors. There's what we call broadsword, but is actually more accurately arming sword. You have two-handed broadsword, which is, I guess, more accurately longsword. There are various different kinds of little sword. There's 18th century small sword, which is very sort of fine and delicate. There's anything that's called rapier, which is supposedly, it's the same sword, usually, but, you know, the style is bigger and or pointier or whatever. Let's see. I've done nunchucks, tonfa, eskrima. You can do sai. What else? Oh gosh. Various different staff lengths. So like Joe staff, quarterstaff. What else? There are lots, is what I'm saying. You can do sword and shield. So sword and big shield, sword and buckler, axe and shield, all kinds of stuff. So many things. Does stage fighting mean you're fighting on a literal stage for like a play? Yes. Does it mean you're trained to do fighting for movies and TV too? It's reasonably easy to cross over. Not to like actual stunt work, but to doing your own fight scene, doing significant chunks of your own fight scenes in a film would be easier if you have some stage combat training, is what I'm saying. Could you be an extra in a battle or fight scene in a movie? I'm sure you could. I mean, quite a lot of people who are battle fight scene extras in movies don't seem to have any stage combat or fight training at all. So there's that. How was Tonfas? They look so cool. It was cool. It was actually really fun. I really enjoyed it. Oh, Elena's here. Hi, Elena. Elena was my saber partner last week, which meant she had to look very scared and back away while I was doing the flashy impressive thing, but then she got to kill me because she was like, in our scene she was the competent one and I was a bit kind of useless and flaily, which was cool. I enjoyed it very much. I was looking for something and I've forgotten what it was. Lena is also someone who, yeah, Jill will hurt you for being mean to her too. Yes. Truth. Has Lena been Jill bullied as well? Yes. Absolutely. At least twice. I'm pretty sure that Liv and I also fought her for 2v1 unarmed, which was 2 years ago, to the tune of the Pokemon theme. Like, we tried to beat her up to the tune of the Pokemon theme. Top 5 things that could be improved in the learning and application of stage combat techniques, apart from never allowing anyone vaguely involved in Game of Thrones fight choreography to do sword scenes ever again. Sorry. I don't watch Game of Thrones. But I have heard some things about the fight choreography in Game of Thrones, and I feel like it's, I don't know. I have heard some things. It is useful. I feel like when it comes to the more medieval styles of sword, it would be useful for people to have more training in that specifically, because two-handed swords are really, they're much, it's actually reasonably quick. Like, I hated arming sword so much because it's heavier than a fencing sword, but you only get one hand. And it was a time. I have a wrist brace that I bought after arming sword because, like, just the strength, like the arm strength, I did not have it. It was not fun. I would probably do better at it now that I am stronger and have better technique, but I really enjoyed longsword because you get two hands, and two hands means you can be much quicker with, like, you can move things around much more easily, and so you have better, like, point control and better targeting, at least if you're me. So, oh, thank you, Sarah, for the super chat. No, you don't have a question, but thank you for the super chat anyway. Yeah, I feel like just more knowing about HEMA related things. You don't have to know every single. You don't have to, like, be an expert in the manuals or whatever. You don't have to, come in and tell everyone if you're a mayorist or not. But I feel like knowing more about how the mechanics of two-handed swords, rather than just using them like they're a one-handed sword that you flail about with faster. Now Duncan is here. The stage combat police are watching you. Welcome, Duncan. How do you feel stage combat compares with other forms of fencing? It kind of... is it necessary to go through endless qualifications? Are there other ways you think are suitable to get involved in the business of pretending to hurt people for entertainment purposes? I really enjoy getting the qualifications. Like, they're super fun. And also, they are ways to be recognized as being good at the thing. Stage combat, I enjoy much more than any of those other things because I've been doing it for much longer and it's fun and you get to act. Like, nobody in fencing cares about your acting ability, which is fine because fencing is fencing and acting is acting, but stage combat is kind of like dance meets fencing meets acting meets the strangest but most wonderful bunch of people you will ever meet. And so I'm just like, no, this is all my favorite things in one place. I'll have that, thank you. Would you recommend stage fighting as a dating activity? Probably not. Like, will you meet nice, interesting people there who might be single? Yeah, probably. As a thing to take your date to, maybe introduction to stage fighting as a first date idea. That's actually, I feel like that would be fun. I'm weird though. Like, if you think the other person would be into that, then maybe. Going to stage fighting courses as a dating activity, probably not. Because, like, it is very easy to get very emotionally attached to people very quickly. I certainly do. But that might not be great for you in the long term because, I don't know, like, I get very emotionally attached to people. I'm like, no, we're friends now. But they might make terrible romantic partners. I don't know. Thank you for the super chat, Peter. And for this, a cup of tea. I probably should have some water, actually. You take a date with you. Yes, that kind of works. Always date by going to things you enjoy. Indeed. Imagine if Jill's first date with her husband was a rapier and cloak fight. That would have been hilarious. No, it was very boring. We, like, went for food. We did the thing where you go and eat and talk to each other like grown-ups. Anyway, that was a really long time ago. It was nice, though. I remember when we went out of the house without having to arrange a babysitter. What is your view on overly elaborate hats in fighting? As long as they don't obscure your eyes, I'd say go for it. I'm very keen on hats. I wear them a lot. Do you start your swordplay left-handed, then switch to right-handed after testing your opponent? Only if it's in the choreography, darling. What do you do if you don't gauge your strike properly and accidentally harm your opponent? If you're in an exam situation or a performance situation, you just keep going and you hope that they go, ah, like you fake hurt them. And then you don't tell anyone, you don't let anybody know. Because if you injure your partner, you will fail your exam. But if you accidentally boop your partner and they play it off and nobody really notices, then you probably won't fail your exam. So, do you have a hat collection? Not really. Can you please stop telling the world you keep injuring each other? I have just said, like, multiple times, that mostly we don't injure each other, we injure ourselves. Which, I mean, is true. Let's see. I was thinking about your Harley Quinn analysis. No, okay, that's not a question. That is an episode suggestion, which is cool, but what mishaps have you experienced? Yeah, it's mostly just bruising people, because either you contact hit them in exactly the same place for like a week, but or they don't parry, and so you actually hit them, but usually not very hard. Are there schools of thought for stage combat? I bet there are. Do I know what they are? No, I do not. Do I care what they are? I mean, I guess also not really. Because if I did care about them, maybe I would know about them. But yes, I'm sure there are schools of thought, but pass. Favorite piece of stage combat you've ever witnessed or been a part of? Actually, it was Liv and Jack. Well, I really enjoyed their saber fight, which was Revenge of the Sith, Emperor Palpatine versus Mace Windu. I got to be Anakin, and Silly String was involved, so, like, it was a good time. How do you incorporate stage combat into writing? That's a really long question, so maybe not. Any tips on making written combat more dramatic and theatrical? No, but I seem to recall that Hello Future Me has a pretty substantial episode on writing combat, which I have watched, I think, and seem to recall being good, so watch that. That's my advice. How do human actors stuck to physical limitations maintain continuity when one is supposed to move at different speed? Obviously you use editing trickery. How do you account for the break? I don't know. That was someone trying to open the door, but it's locked. Use of special effects. Pass. Where is optimal to strike? What are the weaknesses and vital areas? I can only tell you what I'm not supposed to hit. I'm not supposed to punch people in the ribcage because it will wind them. I'm not supposed to punch people in the groin because it really hurts. I'm not supposed to punch people in the face or the throat because ditto, it's very bad for them. Also not supposed to hit people on the head. How would one use silly string? No, the Sith Lord had the silly string. How else are you going to do the Force lightning? Blue silly string. Lady of the Lake, what wisdom can you share? Strange women lying in ponds distributing swords is no basis for a system of government. Just saying. In films, you can change the angle to show fighting. Okay, this question is a little bit confusing. I think the question is, how do you block theatrical fights? As in, how do you position the actors so that you don't see when people aren't actually being punched? And the answer is you, between phrases, you figure out what orientation you need to be in, and you circle dramatically, possibly while saying some dialogue. So if you're like, we start in this position, but we need to be like here so that the punch, you can't see that the punch is, 2 feet away, then we end here, and then we circle a bit, and we talk, and then we do stuff. But you have to block it when it's being choreographed. You have to block it so that your audience is always in the right. You're always in the right place for the audience. Have you ever heard the tragedy of Darth Silly String Wise? Exactly. What does stage combat as a career look like? I guess that would be a question you might want to ask Duncan, because I ended up making YouTube videos about it, which is a little bit what you might call niche, whereas he actually teaches it, which is like a thing that you can do as a career, like fight direction and the teaching of stage combat to people such as myself. How do you refrain from crying out behind you when blocking out a scene? Usually with ease, but so I have been known to be like, no, stop moving, let me move. Like, stop circling. You're in the right place. Just stay there. I'm gonna move, so I'm in the right place. Yes. You can do a lot with like facial expressions to make people stop moving, as it turns out. Just like hardest stage weapon you've ever had to work with. I didn't enjoy arming sword very much because it was heavy and you only get to use one hand. That's probably it. I mean, the other ones can be like rapier and cloak is very technical. Knife and rope is also quite technical. Anything where you have something and is generally more difficult. Unarmed is like maybe the easiest to maybe like the that sentence got away from me. Never mind. Thank you for the super chat. I don't know. Your name begins with L. You have a cute little picture. Thank you for the super chat. Those two people who disliked. Yep. Precautions to prevent injuries. Eye contact. Talking to your partner. And, like, distance. So, there's an acronym. There's always an acronym. The acronym is BEDPAN. Which is to say, balance. Are you balanced on your feet? Eye contact with your partner. Distance, are you the right distance away? And then before you do anything, you prep it, which is to say you signal to your partner what you're going to do, which is basically the opposite to fencing. You don't want them to know what you're going to do. Preparation, action, and nice reaction, because they needed an N. You look at your partner. You maintain your balance so that you aren't falling forward into them even if they don't move. You maintain the correct distance so that you don't do stuff. It's like you maintain the correct distance so that if you stab into them, you're not going to hit them too hard even if they don't move. Then you show them what you're going to do by preparing. So you draw back or you do this or whatever. It can be very slight. It gets faster and you kind of prepare less as you get more advanced, but you show them what you're going to do, then you do the thing, and then they react to the thing. Be better before. Jim, oh, thank you for the super chat. Indian clubs are supreme for developing hand and wrist strength. Good tip. How important... Okay, providing each combatant has a requisite experience level, how important is trust in a fight scene, or is that something that is developed through rehearsal? Yes, to something that's developed through rehearsal. See, again, me getting very emotionally attached to my fight partners. But your fight scene... Like, there are people you like but you don't trust entirely, and then there are people you like and do trust entirely. I guess there are people you don't like but you feel like you can trust them anyway. And possibly people you don't like and don't trust, you don't want to work with those people. But the more I personally find, the more I trust people, the better the fight is. Because if I trust you to do the thing when I want you to do the thing, and you trust me to do the thing when you think I'm going to do the thing, the more you trust each other, the better the fight scene is. Because the more you can go for it with the faith that the other person is going to do what you expect. And so you can really go for it, that swipe across the head, because you know that they've started ducking, you know that they're going to be out of the way. The less trust you have in them, the slower you have to go, and the more you have to look for their cues to make sure you're doing things. So it does... More trust equals better fight, generally. Just in my experience. How much influence do you have as a stage combatant on your own choreography? Depends. Very much depends. But if you can't do something, or if something isn't working for you, then you can always say, because like it's, if you can't do it and you're going to be expected to do it over and over and over again, then maybe do something else. How often did performers actually get hurt historically? often? I don't know how often, actually. I feel like in Shakespeare's time they got hurt quite a lot, but maybe more in the pub afterwards. I don't actually know, I'm guessing. That is a question for someone else. How to do safe stage falls or pratfalls on the floor. It's basically like a one-legged squat. You sort of collapse from you kind of crumple in on yourself and you bend one leg and go to the ground and kind of roll onto your back. There are videos on YouTube on how to do a safe fall, but yeah, it's basically like a one-legged squat to the ground. Did you play with swords and sticks a lot as a child? Yes, I wanted to be Robin Hood, or possibly some kind of Maid Marian Robin Hood combo. Since actual fights end in a matter of seconds when there's the line drawn between style and realism, depends. Like, how dramatic do you want the fight to be? How long do you need it to go on for? Biggest misconception about stage combat? That you can make it up on the spot, I guess. Like, there was a thing with, like, the Joker when that movie came out, and there was something like, oh yes, we really wanted the fights to look improvised, and so we improvised them. I'm like, I mean, I don't think they were anything particularly, like, earth-shattering or anything, but it just seemed weird to me that you were like, you've got actors act. The point of acting is to make words which someone else has written sound like they just came up in your brain and you're saying them with your mouth, or directions that someone else has written are the things that you are now going to do with your body entirely spontaneously. Like, if you can't make things look spontaneous, then maybe the problem isn't that you should improvise your fight choreography. Maybe you're having an acting problem or a directing problem. I don't know. How did you get into stabbing people? I mean, I felt that I did answer that question first, but I just like that it was how did you get into stabbing people? Yeah. How much does a standard hit or full hurt or should hurt? That also depends somewhat on how used you are to doing it, how many times you've had to do it, and also how hard your partner hits you. Ooh, okay. I don't really understand that as a question, so I'm passingly familiar with the SAFD. Your short got me curious about the stages in my area. So I have qualifications with two different boards, with the APC, the Academy of Performance Combat. I took my basic and my intermediate exams with them, and also a bunch of advanced as well. I've also taken a bunch of advanced level qualifications with ACT, Actors Combat Theatrical Training, and I have 12 of those, which qualifies me with ACT as an actor combatant advanced. If I had 10 with the APC, I would also be an actor combatant advanced, but I don't think I have 10 with them. I think I have like 7. I don't know, but it's portable. How much does it hurt? I have a yellow thigh bruise that says a lot. Yes, fair, Liv. How do you ensure safety while punching each other in the face? Distance, eye contact, all those good things. Opinions on fighting in Game of Thrones. I have heard things which are not so great. I have not watched Game of Thrones because, just, people describe it to me and I'm like, nah. When are you gonna do a video with Shad? I did a short with Shad. What happens when people get stabbed? Do stage fighters stab around them and gets fixed later in CGI? Well, I know in The Witcher they use like a half-length sword, and then Henry Cavill would like stab it to the person's chest, and then they would CGI in the rest of the sword, and then they used sticks, which they pretended had axe heads on them, and they added the axe heads in afterwards. I don't know how it works in all other things, but in The Witcher there's a great video by with Henry Cavill talking about it, which he did for Netflix. Oh, thank you for the super chat. Anders, is there any D&D combat you would like to choreograph? Not particularly. Our D&D fights tend to go interestingly anyway, and there's quite a lot of magic used, so I feel like that's tricky. I think I answered that one. Henry Cavill. Arms too short. In stunt work, if something goes wrong, full stop. How do you handle a mishap in stage fighting? Is it full stop or the show must go on? Generally, it's a show must go on. I mean, if you actually kill your partner, then you have bigger problems than whether or not the show is being cancelled. But if you lightly injure them in a way you were not intending, then usually you just carry on. And they go, ah. And then say, but 'tis merely a flesh wound, and you carry on. How related to the skills of normal acting is it? Well, you have to act while doing it. So, reasonably. And you... The more convincing your fight is as a scene, the better it is on a, like, objective level. But also the better marks you get when you're being examined. How physically demanding is it? Very. Very. I mean, it is like doing... It is a combat sport. Just a cooperative one. It's hard work. I mean, you can take as many breaks as you need to, but, you know. How do you combine a character trait with how they fight? I'm not sure how that question relates to the second question. But, how do you combine a character trait with how they fight? So, like, what is their level of experience? What is their level of confidence? How does their level of confidence, or what emotions do they experience through the fight, and how do those change? Like, are they confident at the start of the fight and then they're dead? Do they start nervous but gradually gain confidence and then it all goes horribly wrong? You know, what is the progression of this? Is like the progression of the emotions is the point of the fight. Also, I guess maybe sometimes someone getting killed, but, you know, the progression of the emotions and the plot is like the whole point of the fight. So you work it in based on what they're feeling and what they're experiencing and what they're supposed to be doing. Reading some more. A lot of these are the same question. Can you talk about the additional people that need to be read in when a production has stage fights? So, a little bit, yes, I guess. So, costuming. Per costuming, if there are any blood effects, there's going to be a lot of stuff. You're going to need, like, the clean ones and the ones that are going to get blood on them and washing them. Lighting, makeup. So, makeup will be... So lighting will be a part of the set design, and so if there's a fight and you want dramatic lighting, then obviously you have to tell the lighting people. Props, keep an eye on your props. Set design is an interesting one, actually, because if you want to have a fight which includes your set, as opposed to we're having a sword fight in the middle of this barren, windswept landscape, then you're going to have to choreograph around that, and you're going to have to set the set design with the choreography in mind. Or you have to change the choreography when you actually get on the stage with the design set, which is not always the most fun thing. Non-combatant actors, don't get in the way of the swords. When you do a fight scene in which people are fighting and other people are on the stage not fighting, then they also need to know the choreography, or at least the general thrust of the choreography, so to speak, because if you need them to move out of the way at a certain time, then you need them to move out of the way. This actually happened in Jekyll and Hyde, though it wasn't combat per se, but like at the end there's the wedding, and Jekyll transforms into Hyde, and there's a bunch of stuff that happens, and you need to block all of that before they... And eventually what they had was everybody, like, run off the stage at a particular time so that they could have the fight without people, like, getting in the way, basically. And also because it is more realistic that a bunch of people would run away if Mr. Hyde appeared in the middle of their church. How do you make realistic force behind your strikes and stop your strike without hurting yourself? It's called reverse energy. I think we talked about it a bit earlier. Why are people asking what height I am? I don't know. I will look at that later. Yeah, I learning to punch better is a thing that is on my list. Because at the minute I punch kind of okay, and I don't really know how to. I don't know how to put force into it, but I can fake punch you reasonably with reasonable veracity. Just can't real punch with any kind of force. There we go. Basically, you're trying to clap with your fist. Does not hurt. Shouldn't hurt, usually. Unless you do it like 12 times in the space of a day. In which case, best way to handle accidentally actually getting hit, kicked, or pushed. Well, if you're in the middle of a take and no one's called cut, get up and just keep doing your thing. If you're in a play and it wasn't part of the choreography, like, get up and, keep going. If someone kicked you and it wasn't part of any kind of fight choreography and you're not doing a fight scene, go, excuse me, can we report this, please? Because, accidentally getting kicked during fight choreography is one thing. Someone just straight up punching you is not acceptable. I assume you didn't mean that, though. Deal with punching like everything else. It's all in the hips. Yes, so I have been told and demonstrated with shot putting. And someone sent me a very useful shot putting video. How many times do you have to go over the choreography? Until you know it. Who's in charge of the choreography? The fight director. What weapons are used? Many. What materials are they made out of? So we had nunchucks which were plastic with rope in the middle and foam padding on them, so it wasn't completely pain-free if you get socked in the head with one because you're an idiot, but much less painful than actually getting hit in the head with actual nunchucks. The fencing swords, the thinner bladed swords are usually fencing swords. The thicker bladed swords might be metal or they might not. The knives are made of plastic so that you don't accidentally stab people. What injuries have occurred? Mostly the ones that you do to yourself by falling too hard. Otherwise, mostly bruises. Any non-stage combat videos you want to make? Yeah, but like not currently. That none are currently demanding my attention to the point that I'm like, yes, I'm going to make that thing regardless. I have 8 minutes, so I'm gonna moves that are overused in cinema because they're simple but still achieve the desired effect. Don't know. That's about starting. Have you done fights choreographed to music? Yes, once with Elena and Liv. We did a fight in like one of the school changing rooms, which was choreographed to the Pokemon theme, which was very entertaining. Have you done a review of Raya yet? No, I have watched some of it now though. Favorite non-weapon item being used as a weapon? The ropes in like one of those in a gym set. So I got to swing on a rope and like kick somebody, and it was really fun. How to block a knife coming at you? No, that's not a question I'm gonna answer. Does stage combat involve firearms? Can do. Usually that's a different set of certifications though. Knowing how you find the right stage combat group, you like them. You like spending time, or not even more than you like them, you trust them. Like, if they push, if they're weird, if they're a bit guru-esque, my way is the only way and the best way, and everybody else's way is stupid, watch out for them, because, yeah, people who give you bad vibes, like, How organic does the choreography feel in the grand scheme of things? Does it feel clockwork? Like, making it look or feel realistic, as it were, is a matter of like practice and intent and acting, because it should be ingrained within your muscle memory. That's how you make it safe. How to block a knife flip. Only if you're Elena. If you should know the choreography to the point that it is ingrained in you. The way that you make it look new and fresh and exciting is the acting part. That's why it's stage combat. Because it's for the acting. theatrical violence, not just violence. Make it theatrical. Don't know. Don't know the answer to that question. How do you make convincing perspective? The only way to fake it is to face the back of the stage to the audience and get fake gut punch. So I've done a bunch of contact hits to the stomach and a couple of ones to like the chest. Don't recommend that compared to the stomach. The stomach is much like, you can tense your stomach muscles. It hurts less than getting punched to like here. But you tend to you stack for things like punches, but you can do contact hits, which will sell in the round as in you're actually making contact with them. So as long as they react appropriately, it doesn't matter what angle you are at, people will still believe it. How to block a knife, become a mistborn. Is fighting with a pair of rapiers harder than a rapier, a knife, or cloak? You get tangled up more often, I found, but I would say I found them to be roughly equivalent in terms of difficulty, just because you have things in your two hands and you have to think about both of them. Also, making the cloak flick dramatically is, like, there's a wrist motion, which I sometimes had and sometimes did not. Have you ever rolled off the stage in stage combat? No, I haven't. Liv and Jack once did a fight where he fell off the stage on purpose, though. That was quite fun. Is it possible to improvise and have your partner react on the spot, or is it too difficult? I mean, possible. Like, can it exist in the universe? Yes. Should you do it? Maybe if you are both, like, maybe if one of you is the fight choreographer and you're thinking about how you might like to put the fight together, but, like, if you're on stage, no, never, don't do it. It's not that it's too difficult, it's just that it's gonna look weird and stilted and you might actually hurt them. 3 minutes, okay, getting there. How close is too close? Can it be measured or determined? Okay, so there was a question which is like, if you have a stage combat hero or person you aspire to be like, who would it be? And it's like, well, there are 3 of them in the chat right now. But there we go. Jacane, thank you for the super chat. Enjoy the fish and chips. Thank you, I shall, in approximately 3 minutes. How do you pick or design something that looks real but reduces the danger to the actors? No edges on the weapons. Like rolled edges, blunt tips, plastic knives. If you know, like swords, you can have metal swords, but they're blunt, and ideally because you're choreographing, then it's safer than if you were actually just whacking at each other with bits of metal. But just, you know, rubber knives. How close is too close? You can you learn distance with the length of the weapon and the length of your reach. Like, when you start learning, they stand you with your partner and they make you cross your swords, and they're like, okay, if you're pointing your sword at your partner's chest and they're pointing the sword at your chest, and then you should have approximately this much overlap between the swords, and that is the appropriate distance. Learn this distance. Love this distance. Generally stay at this distance. Curious about how fight choreographers just decide between a flashy looking move and a more realistic one. Depends on the context. I mean, yeah, like, you'd have to ask them. But basically, what's the point of the fight? What's the point of the move? Do we want to be flashy? Do we want to just end the thing? Does the training to be a stage combatant allow you to be a fight coordinator? Yes, it can if you are on the SAFD. Not so much in most of the British boards. Being a fight coordinator requires extra training, but depends where you are, is the answer to that. Do you do any wire work? No, sadly not. I think that is about all we've got time for. So, where is Victor? Yes, so thank you, Liv. Thank you, Elena. Thank you, Duncan, for joining in. Welcome. You're welcome back anytime, but you knew that. Thank you all for coming. I'm going to go and eat a bunch of chips now. So I'm gonna go eat a bunch of fish and chips and like lie down because I'm still kind of tired from last week. Would it be okay if I cite your videos in a future physics break? Yeah, sure. How important is knowing how to fall? Very. Have a lovely day. I hope that if you are having fish and chips that you enjoy them, but otherwise you have a lovely day wherever you are. And I'm gonna try and find... see, I always lose the button. And I don't know where it is. This is not the button. This is not the button. I found the button. Okay, it's fine. Goodbye, everybody. Have a lovely morning, evening, afternoon, or night.